A potter at his wheel I chanced to see, pounding some earth and pottery. I looked with eyes of insight, and methought 'twas Adam's rib with which he made so free. Ah, yes, the potter's wheel can make you see God Almighty, making mankind from the dust. I've had those thoughts many times while at the wheel, but perhaps it was Picasso who said it best. Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. What a profound thought, and such a beautiful description of why art is so very necessary. I was born in Biloxi in 1897. To live in Biloxi, even as a child, is to feel its history, its depth. Art began here sometime around the year 8000 BC. Shards of pottery, made by the first people, also known as the Biloxi, began to unearth themselves in and around the mainland across from Deer Island, even when I was a child. Perhaps that is what began my fascination with pottery. I am Manuel Jalanivich, a potter. My father, Luka Jalanivich, died from a heat stroke in August of 1902. He was a cook, and one can only imagine the heat from a Biloxi kitchen in the early summer in the early 1900s. Papa was an immigrant from what was then known as Austria. Today you would call it Croatia. I was only 5 years old when my father died. My older brother John was 7, and my younger sister Mary Louise was 2. My mother, Manuela Moreno Jalanivich, was born in Louisiana. Her parents were also Louisianians. My parents were married at the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church. 3 years after my father died, my mother remarried. She had young children to feed and raise, no? I was fortunate enough to be a student of Miss Mary Ethel Desmukes. She was a great artist and a teacher of art in the Biloxi school system. She trained in New York under J.H. Twatchman and Kenyon Cox. What a wonderful foundation she gave me. Fortune smiled on me again when George Orr allowed me to study at his shop on Howard Avenue. He also allowed me to sweep the floors in the afternoon, but I gladly did so. At age 18, I owned my own shop on Howard Avenue, but soon realized that I needed more time to hone my craft. I moved to Benton, Arkansas, and found work at the Nil Oak Pottery Studio. Once again, I grew as an artist. Now, as so often happens, life interrupted my studies. The year was 1918, and the Great World War was raging. I enlisted in the United States Navy at New Orleans and attained the rank of Seaman Second Class. Now, a year to the day after enlistment, I was dismissed from service. I couldn't have known that the war would end so soon, as communication was still primitively slow in those days. Immediately upon dismissal, I sought to continue the study of my art, and I found the Durant Kilns in New York. It was in New York at the Durant Kilns that I worked on a large order for the Vanderbilt family. It was for a party they were hosting, and the order totaled $3,000. In your money, that would be $58,000 worth of pottery. It was also in New York that I met my lifelong companion, Ingevard Olsen. He was a technician trained at the Royal Danish Chinese Copenhagen Kilns. He was also an immigrant from Copenhagen, and finding him was like finding my other half. We traveled to Central America and worked in Panama for some time. We then moved to San Francisco, which became our home. While in San Francisco, I sold my art under the name Jalan Pottery. Even though Ingevard had started new lives for ourselves in California, my old life still beckoned to me. So I returned home to Biloxi for visits with my family and to gaze at the Mexican Sea. While here, I also showed my art. In fact, I showed my art at the first Gulf Coast Art Association exhibit in 1927. Miss Desmukes was so proud of my progress. Other artists on display included Professor William Woodward, Joseph Fortune Meyer, Peter Anderson, George Orr, and Miss Desmukes herself. In the mid-30s, I taught art at the California School of Fine Arts. We moved to Belmont, California, and we built a lovely home there. Ingevard was also an interior designer. It was in Belmont that we experienced some of the most gratifying work of our lives, teaching pottery to wounded veterans of the South Pacific Theater at the Letterman Hospital. I'd say the potter's wheel worked its magic there, as it always does. I died in Belmont at the age of 46 in 1944. I am buried in San Mateo County next to my love, Ingevard. You can still find my art today on online retailers such as Etsy and eBay, though I'm not quite sure what those are. There's a museum in my native Biloxi dedicated to my friend and mentor, George Orr. They teach pottery there. You should give it a try. Perhaps you are also a great artist in hiding. Now, the kilns are still hot and I must attend to my work. I thank you for your time.